Good afternoon, Rachel Rosen.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Caffeinated.
Oh God. Uh-oh. Like when you're not caffeinated.
Yeah, exactly right. I know the craziness just continues.
Like with Mary Lou.
Oh, I know. Seriously, I was so loopy with Mary Lou, but you know what? I was Mary Loopy.
Loopy. And it's funny because I was thinking to myself just now, how many questions was I able to get in?
Well, you were, we volley.
We tried to volley, but I was definitely like, I feel like I was like,
I know it was like one gay gasp after another, just like trying to get some breath in me. It was too funny.
It's fantastic. It's all good. She's a trooper. She's awesome. And that episode was just released and it is now live. So go treat yourself to some Chef Mary Lou. I want to call her like Mary Lou Who, like from
Right.
So cute.
Come join Mary Lou with her two favorite Jews.
Yeah, exactly.
Now that she's talked to us.
But that just brings me to want to remind everybody again to please subscribe if you can. It's easy, guys. You just
it's so easy.
Subscribe button on YouTube or maybe download on either Spotify or Apple or Stitcher. We're on a couple different podcast platforms, but that just allows us to hopefully just gain some more traction and continue doing these wonderful episodes for you. So
yeah, and again, people that work in production, that work in anything starting from the ground up, know that a lot of work goes into anything that you care about. But Rachel and I spend a lot of time, a lot of hours of outreach and post-production, which Rachel does all the post-production. I do a lot of the outreach to our guests, especially guests that might not have a connection to Rachel or myself until we have a chance to talk to them on the show. And in general, it takes a village. It really does. And that village is...
I was like the village of the two of us.
Yeah, exactly. But we're superhuman. So thank you for your support. And yes, as Rachel says, please support us if you really want to see more of us so we can continue talking your ear off with lots of sass and lots of pizzazz.
Yes, and continue to break your eardrums with Hero's incredible octave range now of squeals.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Right? Oh, scary. Yeah, smoker. You do not smoke though. Speaking of superhuman, I just had a B12 shot today, which I don't know if you do those.
A what? Oh, B12 shot. You loved your B12 shots.
B12 shots. Like, I feel like, and I don't know if other women can attest to this, but I feel like it's also very helpful for not just everybody, but specifically women's health. I feel like a lot of women are B12 deficient. Mm-hmm. And not only that, it helps for mood and those kinds of things, mental health. I mean, we've talked about that about a million times in this show, but B12, I just feel like it gives me real swift kick in the pants and just gives me that additional energy that I need. And so it's good. You're running off caffeine. I'm running off B12.
God, it would be nice to have a kick in the pants once in a while. I sure need one.
A good swift kick in the pants.
Oh my God, yes. From front, back, any side, just kick me.
Desperate, oh my God.
And when you said B12, I'm like, okay, are we at the old folks hall playing bingo? Because I am so there. Especially if it's drag queen bingo. Yes, please, and thank you.
And I've done that before.
So much fun.
Specifically, we're getting kind of off tangent here, but...
That's okay.
Really, we do have our first, I'm so stoked, our first drag queen. We won't say who it is, but coming to our show January or February, I believe, end of January.
Yes.
But speaking of which, I actually did in Las Vegas, I found this incredible, random drag queen bingo off the strip in real Vegas and was I swear we were the only tourists because they're like, how the hell did you find out about this? I forget how I found out about it, but it was phenomenal because, speaking of Vegas, they sang, they didn't lip sync. They were just singing show tunes and all the dirty stuff with the bingo that comes with it, the cock and balls, make sure you get the, those kind of lines on your sheet. And oh my God, it was amazing.
Oh, love it. And did you go with Adriano?
I did. Yeah, I did. I went with him and we actually were there for a wedding. This was so I just like, you know what? Let's find something that's just different and not on the strip, not typical. And I was searching it. It just happened on this one night, the night before we left Vegas to come back to Vancouver. And it was just one of those amazing evenings. And okay, now we're just like talking each other's ear off.
Oh God, we gotta talk about Vegas, because I gotta talk to you about my trip to Vegas a couple years ago with my ex-partner Murray, because that was hilarious.
I love it. And we should do that on another episode.
Yeah, another episode, because I want to introduce our most absolutely beautiful specimen of a human being that is going to be tuning into us, and that is no hit on anyone that we've had on the show, but you'll see why.
It was like, are you just like singling out? I mean, she is gorgeous, yes.
Mm-hmm. But it's not just the visual. You have to hear the way she speaks, the way that she presents herself. Just her essence is something that is just like, I swear, it's like Princess Jasmine out of Aladdin. Like, not the stereotype, but I swear to God, it is legitimately like that.
She does. Yeah.
Right? Okay. So our guest that I am so stoked that we could get on, she has been a longtime friend of mine ever since I was actually 18, and I'm 28 going on 29 now. And she was someone that I met through the yoga community, in a yoga class with one of the teachers that I used to practice with. And she was in the classes as well. And we just started chatting and about nutrition, and I was going through my adrenal fatigue, stage 2 adrenal fatigue, when I was having some dietary issues, and those are cleared up now. And we kept in touch through social media, and she was always just the most humble, sincere, and she saw me the way that I saw myself, when many other people, and still many people, never have and never will. And I always remember those people that truly would see me for who I was, and those are the people that I want to give back to now as I'm older, and whatever I can do, I will.
And there's a reason for that, because what she does is exactly that. She sees people for who they are. She's and she'll correct me if I'm wrong, but when she comes on, she's a huge motivational speaker. She's a master hypnotherapist or hypnotist.
Hypnotherapist through clear mind hypnosis.
Yeah, which is unbelievable. She calls herself, which I do want to ask her about, she calls herself an unconsultant, which is, so must be a play on words on something, and I want to know what that means. So hypnosis master trainer. So I guess she teaches people how to do that as well.
An awesome author, of a best-selling book, I Cheat at Meditation, which is available at Barnes & Noble and Chapters and Indigo and many places in North America and online and Amazon. And she also just launched another book recently, if I'm not mistaken, or she's in the process of writing an additional publication, which is going to be another book.
I think that's the case, because I one out there yet, but I'm sure she'll chat about that too.
Oh, she totally will, for sure.
But with that being said, I Cheat at Meditation. She's a meditator, and
yoga teacher.
Yes, she's an ex-model, which I'm not
surprised. Yes. Oh my God, I can't wait to ask her about that, and for her to hopefully share a little bit about that part of her life, like all the way through how she came to where she is now. She's many stories for sure.
Yes. And it's interesting because also when I was looking her up, she was talking about having done this, what she does with motivational speaking and coaching, started it like 20 years ago. I want to be like, how old are you? Because you look like a young spring chicken. Like, I don't.
I'll let her speak to that, because I actually know that. I know that answer.
The answer? Okay. I won't, and if she doesn't want to share that, that's fine. But I was just thinking, my God, like, no, so she's done a heck of a lot. She's worked with like professional actors, executive athletes, from FIFA, NHL to like, she's just got a huge far.
And a huge mentor of hers is actually Tony Robbins, who is a huge mentor and marketing maven and public speaker and motivational speaker as well. And so I don't know a lot about Tony Robbins, but I do know a lot from the perspective of how I've learned from her.
Oh, so, Tony Robbins is phenomenal. Like, but I wonder how close their relationship is. He's like a fucking mogul.
I know he's a mentor for her, and I think I don't know if he found her, but I know that through some course, and we'll talk about this because Farzana's been a TED speaker, a TEDx speaker in Vancouver. She's been a presenter at Wanderlust in Whistler. I know at least once, if not twice. She has such a platform. And what I absolutely adore about Farzana is that she is truly who she is and is not identified by what she does. She is
Mm.
completely identified by that person who she is. And here she comes on.
Come.
Hi! Oh my god, gorgeous!
We're just gushing about you, like just gushing and introducing you and going on and on and on and on. It's so nice to meet you.
It's so nice to meet you too.
Yeah. So, is it Farzana or Farzana?
It's either.
Well, what do you prefer?
Well, you know what? The fact of the matter is no one is ever going to have that kind of accent to pronounce it the way my parents do.
Okay.
So
Fair enough.
and then also, if you ever meet a Persian person, my name is Persian, they will say, "Oh, no, it's pronounced Farzani, Farzani."
Okay.
Like, so even my parents don't necessarily pronounce it the correct way.
Interesting.
Okay.
But yeah, like Farzana, it's such a simple name. Like, it's such a like phonetically simple name, and either of those pronunciations are correct. But I find people will add like extra vowels, and they'll add like, sometimes I've had like PH at the beginning, and I've like extra H's. I've had like double Z's, double N's, like super.
Oh my god. You have like the perfect name for Scrabble. Like you have an F, many J's. Like you would literally kick the ass off at any other Scrabble player, Farzana.
Right, and the Z is worth what, 10 points?
Yes, and J's are worth 10 points too. Like you're already kicking ass and taking names without like even dropping a square.
4, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, who plays Scrabble, right?
Right. I just started playing it on Facebook with my friends, and I'm like, oh my god, you guys are still playing this game? Jesus, can I just play Boggle, do word searches into crosswords? I'm horrible at crosswords.
Any word games. I love crosswords. I love Scrabble, all those kinds of things. But anyway, we're getting totally off on words, but it's interesting that you said, I feel like that could be a metaphor for people putting extra letters in your name, because it's kind of like people make things more complicated than they really need to be.
Yeah, very so.
Yes. So without further ado, we did do, like I said, a little introduction to yourself. We are recording right now. I always like to let our guests know that. So.
Oh my god, they're in the right place, girls. They're in the right place.
I love it. So we just, like I said, did a little introduction to yourself. Please add on to that. So we were just talking about, big motivational speaker. I'm sure you've done a number of maybe a few TED Talks or TEDx Talks, those kinds of things. An author, meditator. Okay, this is what I want to ask you about. What is an unconsultant?
So basically, I think anytime most people hear the word consultant, they think like person you pay money to for no tangible service.
No kidding. Oh, it's like a therapist. Ooh.
Oh, come on. Don't even go there. But
sorry, I had to continue.
I mean, we could call me an untherapist too, right? A non-therapist. It was just kind of meant to be like a bit of a playful sort of thing. It's like, yeah, because I do consult a lot, but I think also to me, it's really important to distinguish the difference between actually strategically supporting someone on their journey, right? And like people often ask me, like, I don't deal with deep medical psychiatric issues, right? Like that's still something that you would go to a doctor for. I don't deal with, I'm not the person who will fix your problems for you or will tell you what to do, right? And a consultant is supposed to give you their opinion. And so for me, it is like, I mean, it's funny that we were talking about words at the beginning, because we construct these words to make stories, to make meaning out of our lives. And my job is to really help deconstruct those things, help people look at those things really critically so that they can actually go into their lives and find logic. I was actually talking to someone this morning, and we were talking about I was expressing that I am a deeply emotional person, except people wouldn't know that necessarily about me, because I think I've spent my whole life, even before I formally got into motivational speaking and coaching and psychology, cognitive behavior therapy, all that stuff, hypnotherapy. I have spent my life sitting with my emotions and making sure my emotions and my beliefs and my values align, so that I can be passionate and emotional and profound, because emotions are really like the superpowers of your nervous system, right? Like your emotions will change your brain.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
of
Yeah.
so
course.
being deeply emotional is, I think, a neurological superpower. But I also think that we shame emotions. We shame people who are emotional. We call them too sensitive. We call them,
Hmm.
all kinds of things. But for me, um, this work with words and paying attention to oneself and taking the time, be it through meditation, be it through other practices, to actually do the work makes it so that you can understand that your emotions are a chemical as well, but also to actually connect where is this chemical coming from in my belief systems and my past experiences, subconsciously, consciously, or otherwise.
Oh my
Well
God.
said, because we talk about trauma a lot on the podcast, and there's a link of trauma from any source of onset or intergenerational or epigenetic. And again, emotions are a basin of what your experience and perceptions are. Those patterns become set, they become subconscious, and then they become learned patterns. And we have to unlearn to relearn and recalibrate so we can be functional and effective as human beings.
But and I just totally, and I just want to say also, because I was reading a book on neuroplasticity, and what Hero's saying is totally correct, but I also believe that like we get too much into, and I think Farzana was saying this, too much into the labels that have been defining us or that people have put on ourselves, or maybe we put on ourselves for so many years, that I think the issue starts to become, and I'll speak from my own experience, that I'm like, well, I can't change, because this is just who I am. This is me. This is my label. And so that's where like reading about neuroplasticity and just reading about how the brain, things can change, your neural pathways can change, like is really. Go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
No, you're like touching on something that is so important to me, and that we like our nervous system, our brain, it exists in our entire bodies, and
Yes.
our consciousness is housed in this body. I call it your earth suit. I've always called it the earth suit, right? Like you wear this body to exist in this reality, on this planet, in this time, in this space, in this dimension. And all of that science is there. And here's the thing, no matter what we study in neuroscience and all of the neuroplasticity studies that we're doing, it is still the consciousness that has an experience. It is the consciousness that says, wiggle your pinky finger. It is the consciousness that says, I don't feel like myself right now. And like it, and I come back to this so often, but I'm always saying that it's like when you don't feel like yourself, when you can recognize that you are not behaving or feeling like yourself, is the moment that your capital S self is recognizing who you truly are and reminding you of who you truly are. And I
Hmm.
think that, we can talk neuroscience, but much of this analysis of feelings and thoughts and all of the belief systems and values comes into the work that we do, I think, to not be your best, because that is an effortful practice, but to be your true self and to start to become more and more in alignment with what you sense beyond emotional feeling, to be who you really are.
Hmm.
If that does that make sense? I
Absolutely
went
makes
many
sense.
layers and tried to.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I was saying to Rachel is that you and I have had a relationship for like 10 years in many different facets and angles, which is phenomenal. Like you and I haven't aged a bit. And I and just mutual respect. And so I was saying to Rachel that because of that multifaceted background that we come from and our life experiences and how they shift us, I wanted to actually come back to what we were just talking about now, but I would love it if you are receptive and willing to share with us and our viewers about who is Farzana from day one, meaning, not you can't remember your infant years, of course, but as early as you can remember, how did you come to where you are today? And how did
Yeah.
you learn and acquire this life experience that you share so eloquently and so, in my opinion, masterfully now? Like, how did you get here?
Okay, well, first of all, I've always been a cozy person, and I have my weighted blanket right now. And I was like, we're going to podcast. We're going to get Jewcy,
Yes.
the name.
Yes, absolutely. Please.
I'm so honored to be a guest on your show too, for like many reasons.
Oh my God. Stop it. No, really. The feeling is completely mutual. And I do though want to hear, because okay, I was reading and you said you've been doing this for like 20 years. So I'm thinking,
More.
how old are you? Because you don't look like you don't have to tell me how old you are, but I can't imagine you've been doing it for that long. Yeah, you can keep it secret. You don't have to let us know.
I had a milestone birthday on November 10th. It was
happy birthday. I can kind of guess maybe if it's then been 20 years. Happy birthday, belated.
Thank you. 24 years now.
Wow.
I've been meditating for about 37 years. So, okay, so to answer your question, I believe that my journey is as much a choice as opposed to a life calling. I can, like, from like as early on as I can remember, I can remember I probably can't remember the first time, but I remember from the very beginning of my life, because I was only a month old when my family adopted me. I was born in Canada, in like a little tiny little small town in the middle of nowhere, which I think makes me extra Canadian.
Yes.
Hey, yeah.
Which, Rachel, you live kind of a little bit further out now, or further in?
I do further. I guess you would say further in, but for those that are on the coast, it'd be further out.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I grew up in Vancouver, specifically North Vancouver, and I was actually born in Toronto. Long story. But anyway, I moved when I was very little. But my husband and I just decided we had had enough of the quote unquote big city, and we moved to Vernon, which people think is super tiny, but it's actually double the size of Squamish, like double the population, and we're really close to Kelowna. So anyway, enough about. But yes, it sounds like you grew up in North Van then.
So I did. I grew up in North Van. North Van in the 80s was very different.
Yes.
I can remember being like barely, I don't know how old I was when my parents told me that I was adopted, but I think it was always in the context of like, you are ours and our souls. We wanted you before we met you, and we love you. And it just, I think that really fostered a sense of gratitude for everything in my life. And I was raised in the Sufi tradition with 4 a.m. meditation. I think I was like 2.5 or 3 years old when my mom took me to my first morning meditation. And there weren't really any instructions. And it was like for this thing called Students Week, where all the children run the ceremonies for the week, like with support from adults. And I went into this pitch black room at 4 a.m, sat on the ground, and my mom had me some prayer beads, and she's like, just say this mantra over and over again. And something felt wrong about it. And I remember, and I was a weird kid. I think I was already like, I'd always think about reality and existence. And I remember just watching trees sway when I was a kid. I was always like a nerdy, weird child. But when I went to the mosque and my mom said that, something felt wrong to me about it. And I just kind of put the beads down, and I sat there and I kind of asked what I conceived of then as God, which I now conceive of as the infinite universe. And I asked and I said, well, what am I supposed to do? And this like corridor appeared in my mind, and it went from my mind. It kind of like narrowed, and then it opened up into the expanse of the universe. And it was just, and I was like 2.5, 3 years old. So I didn't have like a lot of thoughts. So, but as my thoughts would come out, they would come out and they would pause in that little narrow portion. And I would sit there and I would go, well, I guess it's not that big of a deal. I'm like, yeah, okay. So my brother like threw the cards down and said 52 pickup, but not such a big deal, whatever. And then the thought would go, and all my thoughts kind of came through. And then eventually, I'm of course joking about the 52 pickup. I mean, it only happened like once or twice. But the corridor dissipated and it just dissolved away. And it was just me in this expanse. And it was black, but it wasn't darkness. It just felt like me and the entire universe. And I remember sitting there, and there was no time, there was no space, just a beautiful feeling. And sort of towards the end, I started to get this feeling, or this like almost like something saying, but not really in words, but a sense to look up. And I opened my eyes and I looked up and I perceived these blobs of light floating around the ceiling. And to me, as a child, they didn't look like people. They didn't look like anything, but some of them just seemed to be there. Some of them seemed to be connected to people. And I was like, oh, well, those are angels. Like that was the story that I gave it as a child. And because of that story, it just felt to me, I perceived them to be like rejoicing or celebrating that we were there. And it just seemed so beautiful. And I had this sense of love and protection and space. And so now, did I perceive that because I was already spiritual or because I was unfiltered or unfettered? I think so, possibly. Or was it because I was gifted? Is it because I was meant to be? Was that the event that set me on the path? I don't think so. I don't know. I can't really say. But I know I had some moments like that. And then after that, I got up every morning for my entire life at 4 a.m. to meditate, not always at 4 a.m., but mostly at 4 a.m. And then I remember when I was 5, and this is like really significant for me, but I remember my mom, like, and these are a little more metaphysical things, but these are the stories that my brain created as pivotal moments for why I do what I do, and my outlook and why I'm here today. But I remember being 5 years old and my mom, so again, she used to like do these like math drills with me, and my dad would like write them out by hand. Like it's like basically like Kumon on crack, but like in the 80s.
Oh my God.
It was like Kumon before Kumon existed.
Kumon.
And
that's funny. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I would have to do these drills, and they wanted me to do like the 12 times table, but I was way too young for the 12 times table. Like I'd memorized the other ones, but I just couldn't do it. And I remember like getting like really badly in trouble. Like we won't go into the details, but I remember being sent to my room and going up into my room and being like, God, what did I do to deserve her as a mother? This is so unfair. And I actually had this moment where I flashed back to before this life, and it was me in an ageless form without really any body, and it felt like there was this table in front of me, and there were these 3 figures, and then tons of people, like the rest of the universe was there too, and there was a table, and on the table were cards laid out that I had chosen. There were 3 main cards that were sort of like the pillars of things that I had agreed to do in this life, and the rest of it were the things that would happen along my journey that I'd chosen. And these figures asked me, are you sure you want all of these things? It's going to be really difficult. And I said, yeah, well, if you want me to do these things, then I'm going to need these things, because if I don't have these things, I'm not going to be able to do that. And they said, are you sure? And they were kind of like testing me. And one of the cards, and I'd never seen a tarot card in my life. I was so sheltered, but one of those cards I knew was my mom. And it was such a profound experience. And from that moment, so like I had like this sense of gratitude from being adopted, this sense of connectedness from my meditation, the sense of I have chosen my life. This life is happening for me. When I was like 5 years old, I can even remember my sweatpants that I wore because they were my favorite sweatpants, like in that moment, in the color of my room. Like it's such a vivid memory because it was so emotionally intense, right? So coming back to the neurochemistry of those moments. And I had a lot of these moments. And then, growing up on the North Shore, but I think you're a bit younger than I am, or we're fairly close in age, but
fairly close. And I also want to ask you how you know one of my best friends, but we'll talk about that later, the Sukups. Mike Sukup. But anyway, yes, I'm only a couple years younger than you, I think.
So, but then like in the 80s on the North Shore, and like, especially in West Van, it was not particularly diverse.
No, that's true. That's at that point it's true. But then I found for myself, so you grew up in West Van, or?
I grew up, like my first house was by Cap College.
Okay.
The townhouses, and then we moved towards the Cove. But my first schools were like Montessori and Ross Road, and then I know, right, in Lynn Valley, so close. And then my parents switched me to Collingwood, which was hell, and then I finished at STA.
Ah,
Oh,
So like a proper, but
what's STA?
St. Thomas Aquinas Catholic School, North Van. I
That's what I
loved it.
thought.
I
Okay,
had a
yeah.
really good experience
you
there.
definitely probably, I think we have some people in common. I was going to name drop some people, but
Yeah,
we don't necessarily have to do that. But no, you're right about the not really being super diverse in the 80s. But
brutal.
I totally do remember in the 90s, I guess when I was starting to get to the end of high school, that there was a fairly big Persian community in high school. Like I remember there were, definitely it was getting a little bit more diverse, and we had a lot of kids from China and those kinds of things. But I don't, it's funny, like I actually, the diversity that I remember and experience is being one of the only Jewish families in my elementary school. So I do remember being bullied for those kinds of reasons in the North Shore. So I can see both for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty rough. Like my godmother was Scottish, and she wanted me to do Highland dancing, and they wouldn't have me, and they were like, nobody wants to see a little Indian girl kicking up her skirt. So I wound up playing the bagpipes. I when I was in school, even the teachers bullied me and picked on me. When I was at Collingwood, even the teachers picked on me. They kicked me out of ballet as well. They were like, nobody
Fuck.
ballet. All kinds of things like that, where like I was not like, I did it for a couple of years, but as soon as I started to get older, they just didn't want me in ballet.
Jesus.
And I guess being adopted as well, I don't really look like my family's East Indian, but I didn't look like my family. And I didn't think that any of it was racism, because the propaganda when we were younger is there is no racism. That doesn't exist. And nothing was spoken about, right? Like, so stuff would happen, but I just thought that I was being bullied, that nobody wanted to be my friends. And I think children, partially it's because they don't know where to categorize you. And I think that there is still very much a subconscious fear of people who are darker, like this thing that you don't understand. And it's funny, with all the BLM stuff that's happened this past year, it has been such a learning education for me, because I grew up thinking there was just something wrong with me, and that's why people didn't like me. I thought that there was like something innately wrong with me and unworthy.
Yeah.
So it's just been really interesting. And I'm glad in a way that I had that, because I've taken a lot of responsibility for who I am, and I didn't blame the world.
Yes.
But that's not to say that there wasn't a lot of subconscious racism.
Well, and did maybe just for a lack of better terminology or word, did your awakening, so to speak, when you were like 5 years old, those kinds of experiences that you had, did those help you through these times? Like, did you feel?
For sure, like meditation, music, arts, books, like, I don't know, I always kind of had a bit of space to look at people with understanding.
Yeah.
There's always a bit of space where I could pull away from this life and realize that I was like, my eternal consciousness was not just this moment in my life. And I had books, I had art, I had music, I had other things, you know. And I was lucky enough to have like a really strong family, and to like, weirdly enough, like in the outside of my family, just shunned everywhere. And then inside of my family, my mom was the eldest sibling. And so I'm like the only daughter of the eldest sibling. And so kind of like a matriarchy.
Yes.
And I like 12 younger cousins for whom I would look after all of them at the same time, and like supportive community, and make sure they all played together well, and they were kind to each other and good to each other. So this idea of fostering community also was there. And then in the 90s, my mom was kind of like, you have no self-esteem, we're going to fix that. And she tricked me into going to a Tony Robbins seminar. And that was the first place that I ever realized I could do anything psychologically that was not psychiatry or psychology.
Yes.
And they kind of like rooted me out of the crowd. And in particular, Joseph McClendon, who wrote the book Get Happy Now. He's like the head trainer of Tony seminars, and he and Tony are now 50-50 on the stage these days. And Joseph does a ton of his own stuff with he's so amazing.
Yeah.
One of my best friends. And he pulled me out of the crowd, and they kind of have been watching me, and they said, we've been watching you, and we feel like you have like a special gift with people, and we'd like to train you. Are you interested? And they nominated me for leadership. I went through the program. I started facilitating seminars. They also got me to do my very first modeling job, which facilitated my travel throughout the world, which is how I started coaching FIFA soccer players and some of like my more celebrity clients when I was like working all over the world. And so, yeah, it's been quite a journey.
That is, I'm just going to swear, that's fucking amazing. Like that is bloody amazing. How, like, I mean, talk about just kind of having it, so to speak, and just having the aura or the whatever it is that people can see, and then just going with it. I mean, that's, I almost like feel a sense of like not lack, but a sense of like wishing, I guess, that I had experienced or known those things that you knew at such a young age, because I feel like I'm only just starting to embark on that whole journey that you're talking about at 37. I'll just say how old I am. Like, so it's a very, it's a rare thing. I think you have perhaps.
Well, you know, what's interesting though, is you can have all of this insight and awareness and understanding, but there is something to actually being in the physical present moment and appreciating this life. I did, like, after my 60-day Vipassana, for lack of a better term, it was longer than Vipassana because it was from dawn till dusk. I went to an ashram and I meditated in silence. I did not speak for 60 days. And I, like, from dawn to dusk, sat and meditated. I barely ate after the first 2 weeks. Like, wasn't hungry anymore. I would like eat like a couple, like some dates and some almonds, and I didn't lose any weight either, but I wasn't actually expending energy. I would like drink water, but go for like some little walks. But I would sit from dawn till dusk. And after that, I sort of hit a point and I was in bliss. I was loving it. I was so happy to be there and meditating. And the universe kind of gave me like a kick in the ass and said, we did not put you in that body on this planet so that you could be over here. We put you in that body on this planet in this time so you could use this and reach people.
Right.
Wow.
And sometimes it's harder to actually be human and present and emotional and connect and actually feel the feelings.
Yes.
You just psychologically, spiritually know the answer and just try to jump to the end result of what you could be at. Because that doesn't take into account the fact that you're still a human being in a body and you have all of these emotions to process. And emotions that don't get processed are neurochemicals, and they sit in your shoulders, in your chest, and they wait for you to pile up and be triggered when you have an anxiety attack in your low back, right? And so you have to feel the things. You have to like live stuff. And I think that you can know every like meme, every like little nugget of wisdom, but it doesn't change the fact that you have to practice them.
Yeah.
Amen to that, because do you know what my husband even said to me yesterday? I don't know if he can hear me. No, he's got his headphones on. No, and I'm not trying to make him look bad at all, or hard on me, but we can be hard on each other. We've been together for like 15 years almost, but I just got a book for Christmas. It's a Michael J. Fox book. It's his memoirs. And it also talks about how fiercely positive he's been through all the shit that he's been dealt in his life. Yeah. For lack of better words, we kind of probably know who Michael J. Fox is, perhaps. But he's like, why are you going to read this book? Like, you're going to read another book of tools that are going to help you, but they're not going to get through to you. Like, you've done this over and over and over and over again. Like, and it just was a slap in my face, because I was like, but you're right. Like, why is it that I have all these tools in my toolbox after all these years, and I'm all continually going back to square one again with my anxiety? I don't have a good routine that I know is good for me to do. Like, I know these things are good. I don't meditate regularly. I want to. So what do you say to somebody who is like that? Because you kind of just hit the nail on the head there just before I mentioned that. But
No, he I think brought up something really loving for you, right? And you going back to basics is also a really, really important thing too. Like it it it's like that book, The Alchemist. It wasn't one of my favorite books, but I feel like it's always been credited for being one of those books with such a simple story. But at different points in time in your life, if you read that simple story, you're going to get different things from it. I also think that there is something to be said for finding a strategic plan that works for you specifically for where you're at in your life right now, because you're going to be changing and growing and you are so dynamic, especially as someone who wants to learn and grow, and that's your pursuit. You wouldn't be doing this if that wasn't your pursuit. And secondly, I think people don't take into account subconscious programming and how important it is to get to the subconscious roots, which is why I incorporate hypnotherapy in my practice. It is not the only tool. Yes, I am a hypnotherapist and I am a master international trainer in hypnotherapy, yes. But it's also, I think, a really vital tool. But I think subconscious work alone isn't enough. You can do the subconscious work, but then you have to shift your habits and current way of thinking into something that is going to work for your life, your lifestyle, your choices, the why or the purpose of your current life, because our whys kind of evolve. Yes. Right. And if you've ever gone through a point in your life where your personal why or your personal purpose has evolved, you can't motivate yourself by the same habits and patterns and routines that you had before.
Mm-hmm. Very, 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 very true. And that just segues into the hypnotherapy, which I personally have never done, but I've always been interested in. And because I know there's so much for myself that's so subconscious. There's so much deep-seated trauma that's happened, many, many years ago, generations ago, even, that probably hasn't necessarily been deciphered or solved is probably the wrong word, but healed, I guess, so to speak. So yeah, no, Hero, have you done hypnotherapy?
I haven't done hypnotherapy in a one-on-one session, but I can tell that I have experienced subconsciously elements of it because I've been a student of Farzana's for many years in public classes. Have I experienced it? No. Have I picked up on frequencies of it? I feel I have.
Well, what people don't understand is we go into hypnosis every single day. Unless you have some sort of severe brain trauma and are completely incapable of like sleep or anything, your brain waves were built as your circadian rhythms go to go in and out of trance throughout the day. So if you've ever and Hero, I know that you've had like shavasanas and classes where you just zone out and time disappears and you have like that floaty thing, but we've all had moments where we drive places or take the bus and you zone out, or you watch an old movie and you get sucked back into the feeling of when you were a child, or you try to watch that movie with someone else and you can't get sucked in and you're like, oh my God, this is so horrible. And you're like, wow, it's so cheesy. Why did I love it so much? And you can notice the opposite of that feeling. But we also have moments like, I think almost everybody, and I think more and more people are conscious now and they write down what they need to when they go to the doctor. But usually we used to go to the doctor thinking I need to ask about these 3 things. And the doctor asks you a question in a certain way. And you all of a sudden forget all the things that you had to ask. And that's because hypnosis can actually be created by a person, like when you're at a high level of emotion. So you go to the doctor at a high level of emotion, you've got a person who is of authority, an authority figure, ideally. Mm-hmm. If you respect your doctor, they're a person of authority, and they have your focus. So it's just you and them, position of authority. They tend to be standing above you too, right?
True, yeah.
And they got you in there, you're probably like emotional. And that is like a perfect recipe for instant waking hypnosis. And those types of hypnosis or trance, like, because it's just brain waves that we measure. Right. That's all hypnosis or trance are. Same with meditation. Right. It's just with hypnosis, we can guarantee that you get into the right level of trance to be able to access past memories, to not shift the original memory. Okay. And not actually, like, because false memories are just whatever they are. And a false memory could need as much healing as the angry dream you have with your husband when you wake up in the morning and you're pissed off at him because he did something in your dream that was really horrible. And he's like, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything, but it feels real to you.
Yes.
And the beautiful thing about hypnosis is it's a lot like that dream state where you can go in and change the emotional imprint of something, to remove it, to bring consciousness into that, and to realize that it's not the same. It's not the same anymore.
Wow. It's honestly, I'm going to have to hit you up after this interview because it's something that I've always actually wanted to try.
Great for anxiety.
That's me.
Yeah, no, Rachel, Farzana can help you. I mean, Farzana helps me a ton just energetically, but there are some tools that I've learned along the way with yoga and also dialectic behavior therapy, and then being in psychology and psychiatry for 20 years until I was about 20 years old, but Rachel, like for how your brain works and how I know you as one of your best friend, one of your best friends, Farzana can give you some insights that I just don't have because she's experienced. So definitely utilize her as a resource for your anxiety and mental health for sure.
Thank you. No, I will. I mean, there's over the years, and I've done everything from seeing shamans to, at one point, I don't remember what it was called, but they stuck some things on my head and
electrodes.
Feedback.
Yes.
Your feedback's not bad.
Yeah.
That's not bad, but it's not as specific.
And I also only had one session because I was just curious about it. So I didn't, I would say that the time that I probably.
Oh, are you there, Rachel?
Oh, she froze.
That's okay. She looks gorgeous.
She does look gorgeous. She looks like she's captured in this beautiful moment of thought. And
yes.
At least
it was 1 second. Moment. You're fine.
Am I back?
You're back.
Good. Okay, darn you, TELUS. Seriously, I switched from Shaw to TELUS like 2 days ago. Okay, I'm gonna have to look into that. It's the third time it's happened. No, I was just gonna say is with the float house. So with sensation, that was probably the most I've ever been able just to completely zone out, be in the ethers, even so to speak. Mm-hmm. It was beautiful, and it only happened a couple times, but that was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, when you're talking about that too, floating is one of the things that, because it was trending, and now it's definitely not trending, but it was trending for a few years. And Float House is awesome. And I was an ambassador where I had access to float regular, where I could get the benefit and I could afford it. But definitely that restriction of environmental stimulation through therapy, which is what that means, is rest. These are also other neural pathways that can come in, and whether if it's hypnosis or not, it definitely feels similar to that feeling of neuro kind of.
It's trance, right?
Right.
However
yeah.
you go into trance is however you go into trance. And certain minerals like magnesium are very, very important in calming your nervous system. So they will help you go into a state of trance more easily, which is why they help with sleep, right? Like, so it makes sense that you're in those salts, and like it just like your body's just like soaking up those nutrients that it needs.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Oh, I missed that.
Yes. One thing I wanted to ask as well, again, and I always say this if you're willing to share about it, because it's up to you to discern and it's completely free for your comfort level. I'm very curious to know when you talk about the couple stages of being brought to this seminar with Tony Robbins, which I didn't know that part actually. I knew that he was a mentor of yours. I didn't know that's how it started. Can you talk a little bit about, from your own vantage point, about that process of being brought in, learning these tools from someone that saw you for how they saw you? And then I guess the second part to this question would be the connection of being in the modeling industry in the generation you were and because that also makes a difference as well. And the relationships, the interactions, I mean, even being, and I'm guessing you did runway, or was it more editorial, or both?
Runway. Runway and tons and tons of catalog. So, like, know those bra boxes with the picture from like here to here?
Yeah.
Tons of those, but they were always like the really like ugly ones. Like I remember my dad was really like, at least North America, when I was international, it was some sexier stuff for sure. But out here, I was considered like a plus size, bra size. So it was always like those like thick, like 1.5 inch strap, thick straps. And it was always in some like ugly lilac color or like
Okay.
light purple pastel color thing.
Okay.
And it was like the bra cut up to here. And it was
Oh.
like those cross your heart bras.
Oh yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But
I can picture
I
it.
did actually launch JLo's lingerie line
Cool.
when she launched it in Ontario. I think it was like I was in the papers for that back in the day. But so the journey of it was really important for me. It was, I think, being picked out by Joseph and Tony was really the very first moment that I had been seen for something that I valued about myself.
Right.
Weirdly enough, like people used to come and tell me their problems all the time, but I used to get in trouble for it. My mom would be like, "Oh, you're always like helping everybody. You're gonna," and her fear was that I would burn out.
Right.
She was always worried that I was gonna burn myself out, and but it didn't burn me out because I realized it was their thing and that I could support them on their journey. Mm-hmm. And I also always had this feeling of like, it's not what I think is right for them. It's what they feel is right for them.
Yes.
And so that was kind of one of the things that worked so well with the Tony Robbins people. And it was very transformative. I was a really reserved person. I don't think I ever slouched. I don't think I've never sworn or cursed. Maybe I said shit when I stubbed my toe once or twice, but that was like the extent of it. Like you could have stacked china on my head and it wouldn't have moved. Like I probably seemed older then than I do now. And everyone says I look exactly the same, except my little gray streak came in after that.
I love it. Take that, Stacey London. I love you to death, but Farzana, you work that more than Stacey London ever will. Anyways, continue. And Stacey London's Jewish. Love you. Come on the show.
I have no patience to do my nails or dye my hair.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm lucky that for now it's in the one spot. So.
Oh my God, gorge.
Anyways, it was a really beautiful experience being in that, and they knew that once I got into the coaching side of things, they would give us our team at a big event, like 2,000, 4,000 person event. We would get teams of 60 to 80 people, and we would have to read through their like 30 pages of bio. We'd be looking for red flags, suicidal tendencies, like issues that we have to watch out for, because we're going to be responsible for these people over the course of 1 to 2 weeks while they're at the seminar. And I guess people had read mine. And because I was so introverted and reserved, they decided to stick me with the Italian team. And I spoke French and Spanish at the time. I used to be fluent. And so they decided to stick me with these Italians who were like hugging, touching. And I'm like, why are all these people touching me? Like, what is going on here? I was like, I'm like, I hug children. I hug crying people. And I was like a teenager, so I was like, I didn't really want to hug my dad that much anymore. But I'm like, my parents very much anymore. But I'm like, why are people touching me? So I learned like about hugging, and I learned the power of a hug, and I learned that a hug can transmit so much love and caring for another person. That was where hugging became like a part of my life. And it was also the modeling that started, because do you remember Dr. John Gray, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus?
I know the book. I didn't know that's who it was. Yeah.
So it used to be a classic in the male to female, hetero male to female sort of dynamic. Mm-hmm. I think things have changed a lot in our society and our socialization at this point. That book would be dated now, but this was 24 years ago.
Yes.
And they wanted to make so he does like actual sex ed, but he talks about like, men, this is how you actually get a woman to climax. And he talks about the clitoris and anatomy and like how to start. Like he says, north is a really important place for women that men don't pay attention to. And so he like literally goes north, south, east, west. And he brings out, he talks about the alphabet. He talks about how to use the tongue properly for men. And then he brings out a banana and does a demonstration with a banana for the men. And so this was like a relationship portion of the course. It was amazing. It was pretty fun to be that age and to get that, because Catholic school did not give me any of that. Um, and yeah, so they wanted to play a prank on him. So they asked my parents' permission, and then they asked me if I would shoot a video as like a teasing, as like a joke to prank John Gray. And so they got like three of us, and we had to, because his thing about we got like these pool cues, and it was like one of us had to go up and down, the other one had to twist, the other one had to go over the top with the chalk, and then they just got like a gratuitous shot of me like running my hand up my leg.
Yes.
And that was my first modeling job officially.
Oh my God. Oh
yeah, there you go.
And
Yeah.
sorry, how old were you? Like 17?
A little bit younger.
Oh my God.
Nice. Wow.
Wow. What an experience.
But it wasn't like, no, like it was just really funny because that was my first ever modeling job.
Yeah.
And whenever John was speaking on stage, they would like just do like a quick shot of that, and there would like be flames in the background, and the audience would start laughing, and you'd be like, what? And so they would always play these pranks on the speaker.
Oh my God.
And it was really cute.
Oh
They would like play the Ferris Bueller music. And they would, you know, that music. So
Yeah.
People have been saying that I should get into modeling from a young age. They've been telling my family, my parents, designers who knew my mom would be like, please let your daughter model. And I didn't want to. Mm-hmm. Like I liked fashion. I always liked fashion, but I didn't like attention. And it was actually Tony Robbins said, you will model. You will model. You will do this. I don't even know if he even remembers it. And he's like, if you feel uncomfortable, you just need to get over that because it's not a big deal. He's like, you will do this and you will travel and you'll have great experiences. And so I wound up modeling, and I traveled the world, and I had beautiful experiences, and I had challenging experiences. And it was not easy for me because it was an industry where I always got along really well with the designers. But there came a time when I was always the oldest person. I was the only person who didn't drink or do any drugs. And it was just challenging to have conversations. Like, I think I had like several years where I didn't really go on many dates because the types of men that I was meeting were like, well, do you want me to buy you some shoes? How about some cocaine? How about some of this? And I'm just like, yeah, I don't really want a pair of shoes. I mean, I do want a pair of shoes, but not at that cost. And not at the cost of the shoes. I mean, the other cost.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And it was just not being able to have deeper conversations, not being able to have like the relationships of depth. And I always was studying by correspondence at the same time. So for me, like, I didn't get to have that social connection. So, you know, kind of like pandemic times a little bit.
Right.
Well, it seems like such polar opposites in a sense when you think of modeling and the external to what you do now, which is so much based on the internal. Mm-hmm. So it's very fascinating to me that you've had like both experiences. And so did you just kind of get tired of?
Well, I was always coaching at the same time. I was always coaching at the same time. I was working on my degrees at the same time. So it's not like the sides of my life were there. It was just that I had this like just such like these polar opposites at the same time in my life.
Interesting.
Did you notice when you were modeling, and in terms of where you traveled to and the people you met, did you find that there was an ability to, as you kind of did both, but did you find there was a huge kind of, well, you said there was a polarity. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, did you notice that your efforts were recognized, that the people you did provide coaching and guidance to or reflection to, that it actually, you noticed there was an effect that kind of made an impact in a positive way for those people that maybe weren't as alert or as aware until they had come across you?
For the most part, I don't think it's taken me a long time to believe in myself. And I think it still takes daily effort to get up and even do a live and to even say to myself, like, there's still a voice in my head that goes, what makes you so special that you're the one to say these words to those people? What makes you so great that you're the one? Like, other people know this stuff. Why are you the one who has to say it? And I have to tell myself, because I'm still part of, like, I'm still part of the universe. And the more of us that are saying it, the better it is. one person saying it. I'm one, hopefully, of many saying it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I have to remind myself that like we together, we have to serve to do more.
Mm-hmm.
That said, it was always very, very challenging for me. I don't think I saw it, but there were times when I felt it. There were times when we would have to do like a fashion week, and there would be like 20 of us that would be walking like a bunch of the shows, and I kind of knew that I could sort of like leadership wise get everyone to be really nice to each other and be really supportive of each other, and like kind of create this family
Mm-hmm.
between us and have this like really good vibe in the shows. And there was one show director who noticed that, and he just said, look, I always get told that you're too curvy for the clothes, or you're too this or you're too that, but he's like, he's like, whenever you do a show, and it was like one of a really nice compliment that stuck out, and he said, whenever I have you at a show, there's always good vibes. And it was really nice, because I always wanted to bring community. I always wanted people to be nice to each other, but
Mm-hmm.
I think there were a lot of people who didn't recognize that.
No, or weren't open. They just weren't into it.
They're
Yeah.
not aware enough, and also with the culture of the fashion industry on a much smaller level. Even one reason, like I'm back working in retail, and I never thought I would be. And people think that retail or fashion is a transaction. And it's not. It's a therapy, and it's a personal journey that we're on. And I find that that's things that are lacking through any corporation and industry. When you do not have that sense of soul, and you don't have that sense of wholeheartedness to really transparently see through somebody, and they're
Mhm.
not able to receive it, whether because they're just not there and maybe never might get there, then these industries will only continue in my generation, Rachel's generation, your generation, our generation. These industries are only going to continue to become worse and more toxic and self-destruct eventually, and perhaps not even exist in the future because of these lacks of vibrational frequency and receptivity.
Well, and not only that, but of like actual human connection. I mean, I know people are right now during COVID, I know they are going out and they are shopping, but more and more people are still doing it, are not still, they are doing it online, and they're just doing it with a lack of that actual, you know, energetic exchange of a human being that's standing right there. So that kind of leads me to my next question, which is during this time of the past, my God, it's almost been a year of COVID and all this craziness. What have you found that you've had to pivot with your, that's like the word this year, pivoting.
I would actually honestly say adapt.
Adapt. I like adapt is better probably than pivot. Yeah.
Adapt or be more malleable.
Yeah, or what has changed for you, or even what has changed with what you're seeing from your clients? Is it become more difficult with you coaching them, or just different, or you know?
I think that this has been a really cool year for people having an understanding of their own balance or mix of introversion and extroversion.
Yeah.
I think people have become, there are a lot of things that we took for granted, even in our like very, like, I call them like micro communications, like very casual communications that you have, saying hi, opening a door for a stranger, like your barista conversation, right? Like talking to a server at a restaurant, like whatever that might be, like talking to someone in a lineup, you know, the small talk kind of thing. And I think we have grossly underestimated, even the introverts, how much we need people.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I think that the extroverts still need people, but I don't think that many of them ever, because they would always find ways to get that human connection and that socialization. I don't think that they realized how much of it's not the right word, like of a necessity. I was going to say crutch, but that's not really the right word, but how much of a necessity, like we have needs, right? We all have a need for love and connection. But I think our need for love and connection, the love languages really really, really, really come into play here.
Oh my God, do they ever?
Way. And they come into play in our social relationships, not just our romantic relationships. And I think that this has been a really extraordinary year for that. And what I've seen with clients is in the very beginning, people were like, I call it the March phase. It was like the phase of forced. First, it's like, I'm going to clean my house and do all kinds of domestic things. And that's going to be how I see myself as a good person because I clean my room. And we're like tapping into our childhood psychology programming. And we were like, okay, I'm a great person because I clean my house and I keep a good house now. So that makes me a good person and I'm on top of my life. And then it's like, oh shit, what am I going to do now? Okay, well, I'm a creative person because I bake some cool bread and I cut it up with a razor blade. Right? And then it was like, holy shit, I'm feeling really freaking emotional. Like, I'm feeling so many emotions and I can't handle these emotions. Where are they coming from? I don't even know. Because you suddenly hit another threshold in the forced Vipassana of March, April, the March, April, May time, where it was like, these feelings, all of these feelings, and it's like the accumulation of your lifetime of feelings that you didn't have time for, that you didn't think were a big deal, that you were too busy to deal with, are now like being forced up all at once, and it feels like loneliness and confusion.
Yes.
And then everyone had to deal with that, and then it became socially okay to say, when someone said, "How are you?" to say, "Not good." Just okay. Not great. Like, and I made a joke about this yesterday, but it's so true. But like, someone asked me, well, how are you doing? I'm like, well, not wonderful, but okay. But I feel like I'm okay. It's like the statement of 2020.
Yes.
I'm alive.
Like, is that the
I'm
vibe
alive,
2020?
healthy. I have my basic essentials.
Yeah.
And on a bell curve, okay is like an A.
Yeah.
Right? Like for this year, okay.
Yes.
Okay, kind of in like an A. And so I've watched this sort of journey, and then summer hit and we were outside, at least in this hemisphere. We were outside, we were getting out, we were getting these walks in, we were moving our bodies. People who'd never gone out and been outdoorsy were getting outside. Like I don't think my parents have ever sat in the yard before in their lives. And now we have like furniture and we had like a badminton thing set up outside, and like my brother and the kids would come over and we'd have like every Sunday we'd have a picnic outside, like socially distanced. And then the winter hit and we went into second lockdown. Yeah. And that's when I really saw the dangers come in. There were two things that were happening. There were a lot of people who said that they were going to commit suicide if Trump won.
Oh, right.
So people had hit their threshold with that. And there are a lot of people when the lockdown hit the second time around, and they were just such weird imbalanced things. I mean, like the best meme of all was like, I can't visit my mother, but a stranger can wax my bum.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I can't have more than like two people in my bubble, but I'm allowed to go to a restaurant for work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
Absolutely. So it's very confusing.
We'll go to work, and it was just like, it was so confusing. And what I noticed was people really needed the mental health support, but they were scared financially. And I think part of it is like we go into hibernation mode in winter. We eat more, we hoard, we like get ready to like hunker down. And I think there was partly that and saving money and the fear that what if I lose my job? There's no more CERB anymore. There's like, how am I gonna get through this? And so people were no longer investing in their mental wellness anymore.
Yeah.
True.
So even though they really needed it, I saw this like sharp drop off. And I mean, like, can we be real? Like, how many suicides there have been this year? It's crazy.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, I am concerned about this, and yeah, there's a lot of things, and I mean, if it wasn't conflict about Democrats versus Republicans or Trump supporters versus everybody else, and then all of like the Black Lives Matter stuff and BIPOC stuff, and there's been so much stuff in terms of, and now we're dealing with censorship things, and now people are in massive conflict,
Right.
though it's sheltered over the vaccinations of like to be vaccinated or not to be vaccinated. And these are just such polarizing times. And it would seem that I think more than ever, there is a need for a fostering of acceptance of one another,
Yeah.
Yes.
listening to one another, respecting one another's choices, whatever
Yeah.
they may be. And I
Yes.
think I don't know. Sorry, that was a very long answer to kind of how I've seen this year, but I'm personally trying to rebuild my programming so that it can be deliverable online and so that it can be deliverable to companies at a very affordable rate that would provide their employees and staff with weekly practices and programming. And that's something that I'm trying to do to make it more affordable for companies and therefore access more people to give people what they need right now.
So
That's
wonderful.
beautiful. Like,
Yeah.
well, and just to what you were saying about the differing of opinions, and there's an article that I read recently. I actually put it on our Instagram page, but more and more people I'm noticing are talking about the friendships they're losing over. Like now what's starting to happen is, people are kind of seeing the true colors of friends, of family members, of, spouses, of because of these polar opposite, what you're saying, like polar opposite opinions, and not having any room for compromise or just love and acceptance of each other. And so, I guess what I'm trying to say too is the people that maybe were their rocks, or the people that they would go to for mental health support that were not professionals, now they've lost them over these. Like, the number of
Mhm.
people that I know, and including myself, who've had, deep, for lack of a better word, arguments and differing of opinions over what they do with COVID, how they go about their daily lives, like whether they invite this person or that person or all those kinds of things. Yeah, it just like, my God, do we need these resources more than ever?
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, you just reminded me of like someone I know well, stopped going to her osteopath because her osteopath was like, oh, well, Trump, is saving us from this, and was like, I can't go to this person anymore. And this
No.
person had been such a significant part of her healing
Oh,
and
Mhm.
her
yeah.
journey of healing, and was like, I can never go to this person again. And because the healing is emotional, and she felt like she could no longer trust this person.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah.
So much stuff. I wrote this thing a really long time ago about relationships, and I was like, you get into a relationship with someone, and the gist of it was that you you only know who you are right now to the best of your ability, and life will throw at you things where you didn't know you could ever feel or act in a certain way, and same like throw you these curveballs, and you didn't know that the other person could feel or act that way. And maybe they showed up for you, maybe they didn't show up for you, maybe they discovered something about themselves that they had no idea. And I feel like every single person in the world got thrown a curveball this year.
They totally
Absolutely.
did.
Every
What?
person in the world. And these are the kinds of things that possibly would have only gotten thrown at you once or twice in your life.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Curveballs, and yet everybody at the same time.
Exactly.
Yes. Exactly. Balls are up in the air, and not in the kind of way that we want them to be thrown up in the air.
But
Haven't you recognized things about yourself this year that you didn't even know you had, like in you?
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I was, again, as I've talked about before, I was right on the cusp. Like when I turned 28 this year, I was like, I want to have a boyfriend and a husband by the time I'm 30. I'm going to meet someone. I'm going to teach 15 yoga classes a week, all in the same place I was at. I'm going to, do management and direction. Like, this is what I'm going to do. Everything is on the right path. Finally, finally, finally. It took long, but finally I'm here. And then boom, COVID hits. And then it's like, nope, not back to square one, but you're definitely back to ground zero, because then I had to pivot, I had to adapt. And then, as you've pointed out, the stages of each season and the psychological effects on the brain,
Yeah.
having to kind of find and funnel that energy, which I then produced. And then now we're here, and you're thinking, what did I learn from this? Even in terms of dating and romance and relationships, and what I look for in men is different than what I might have thought about men in February before we were hit with the pandemic. And changing my expectations of myself, but more importantly, changing my expectations of others, or even removing expectations from everybody else.
Yeah.
And being a transparency, a film transparency, to realize like I've lost a few friendships that I've had to close the doors on because I just said, you know what, no matter how much benefit I've received from this last years or that person, I have to make some difficult decisions. And then I've had people close the door on me. A couple people closed the door on me, which I did not expect at all. And I'm thinking, well, what did I do to so-called receive that on the other end? Because it felt like a blindside. So you go through these different kinds of experiences. And now, as I mentioned, working back in retail is the best blessing I've ever had in disguise, because it's now putting me back out into the community with the general public and having really meaningful conversations with lots of different people. So my own brain continues to grow and expand and not stay stifled and be
Mm.
not being exposed to lots of different stimulation, because then we stop growing and learning.
And I
Yeah,
feel,
go ahead.
sorry,
Go ahead, please.
really quick. I just feel like people underestimate the practices of beautification or the practices of adorning yourself with clothes that fit you really well. And I think that's why people are shopping so much. But I think that there is a really beautiful therapeutic process of being in retail and helping somebody find something that makes them feel beautiful or
Yeah.
good and like solid in their body, you know? There's something to be said for that.
Well, that's how I do retail. Like for me, I've always wanted to be a fashion designer, and then I realized, okay, I'm not able to sew. I'll have to pay money to have a design team that conceptualize my avant-garde, athleisure, Japanese, European, Scandinavian inspiration. It's going to come in the next 20 years. But my point being is that I kept finding ways to exercise my love of connection, experience. And when I lost weight, I used to be 180 pounds and 5'2" when I was 12. And then when Zach, my brother, passed away, I realized my life was short. I need to lose my weight. And that's what started my journey. Plus being a hypersensitive person, anxiety and all that shit as well. But not relating to that, that's how I found the idea, I can fit stuff that doesn't have to be elasticized. I can fit stuff that actually doesn't have Velcro. My psychomotor skills have developed enough that I can actually tie shoelaces at the age of 12. These are things that I can actually now put into practice and actually go into a store and be treated the way that I'm meant to be treated. And I remember being, 10, 11, 12, fat and whatever, and people looking at me like, this kid has no money. This kid is wasting time. And the moment that they see how I would look at garments and look at how they were constructed and look at how they were stitched or look at why they were the way they were, why they were merchandised, and actually asking true questions to these sales associates or these managers, they realized really quickly that I was there for a reason and that I just wanted to feel heard, seen, and accepted, and that I wanted to be treated in a way where I'm actually being respected. Those memories now draw me back into retail from being in charge, being a love of how do I present a store? How do I merchandise product? How do I style people? How do I be able to be a psychologist and a therapist and a coach and a mentor without having to go to school for it? Retail became that for me, and it has become that again in lieu of not having yoga students to share that same level of hands-on connection to. I then translate that into retail because I get to be a personal shopper, a stylist, and a consultant in the way that I feel I'm actually impacting someone's life in the way that you just described before I responded to your comment. That's the miracle of realizing clothing and apparel might be materialistic, but your experience and your self-control and your ability to control your experience within it is the key factor to making a memorable impression.
Yeah, and Hero, you're using an experience that you had when you were young that may have been negative, so to speak, and you've now turned it into something extremely positive, and now you're helping other people. So it's not even the clothing or the retail, like you're taking your personal experience and now you are helping those, young boys specifically who come into the store perhaps, or the sons or children of
Yeah.
come in and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think that this year has definitely brought a light to relationships specifically. I won't go into detail, but specifically with my husband, things that we probably should have dealt with many years prior and that were just kind of pushed down. And so, everyone basically had a spotlight on them this year, whether they like it or not. And things coming bubbling to the surface. So things that needed to be dealt with, which were fucking hard and, you know, difficult because you were forced to deal with them in a sense, you know, even though you're not ready. So that's kind of what has felt like this year a little bit for me. But I also feel like if it wasn't for COVID, I wouldn't have been able to be like, you know what, I didn't like that job I had and I want to, you know, reinvent myself, and I can do that again now. I have the time. And this is why I have the podcast too.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
And one thing I wanted to contribute in also, as we start to wind down our discussion for at least maybe a part one, maybe a part two, I don't know. But as far as this discussion right now, we know we're all yoga teachers. We're all yogis in the sense of just the mindset, the awareness, the conscientiousness of the universe, right? The universal energy. And Farzana, being a yoga teacher yourself as well, I would love to hear, perhaps in a condensed way, what have been some of your correlations or contrasts, perhaps even as well, bringing these practices of your life and the other facets of your life into providing a public space of yoga in person, right? Because I have taken a lot of your classes, and I'm curious to know on the other side, as the provider and facilitator, what have been some takeaways and experiences that have crossed over, perhaps? And you've been teaching for about 5 years. Oh no, you've been teaching as long as I have, right? Like 8 years, 9 years now?
10.
10. I can't believe how time flies by. So in 10 years, providing public spaces for people in that environment of a drop-in studio environment, I'm really curious to know your reflections of those experiences, and does anything stand out for you?
I'm not sure I understand the question about
Yeah.
the studio. Sorry.
So what I'm relating to is that your experiences prior to teaching yoga classes with hypnosis, meditation, and in other ways of that, have you noticed any experiences in bringing them to the general public in a studio format? Because you've done seminars, you've led things online, but when you're going to the general public and people are coming in, for example, and they haven't experienced any sense of connectivity in a drop-in yoga studio format, I'm wondering if you've noticed any similarities in people that might come to those environments,
Okay.
and differences perhaps in terms of the past atmospheres you've met those people in.
Okay, so lots of layers to the question. So I've been like with the motivational speaking, I guess there would have been tons of people who would have been immersed in those situations that didn't want to be there. In fact, the very first group of 80 people that I was given as my group to get through a full week seminar was a company, and the boss had paid for all of his staff to be at this event. There are a bunch of people who did not want to be there. I mean, here I am, like a child, telling a bunch of, like, getting a bunch of adults through things. And I had like people who were like, I don't care, like, you know, about your thing or this or that. And so I've always been surrounded by people who didn't necessarily like, and I'm talking about myself, who didn't necessarily see me as the person to be there. I think that anytime you host something to do with psychological wellness, be it a yoga studio class, be it a motivational seminar, be it a self-development business networking style event. Okay, because even business networking, it's all self-help stuff. It's tons of self-help stuff, right? It's like mostly self-help psychology and then a couple of pointers on how you should do your marketing or what system to use or something like that. But I find all of these places attracts a certain type of person, or certain types of persons. So we attract people who are goal-oriented and already on the journey of self-development and self-betterment, I think. And in a good way, I think we can also, in these fields, attract sort of the lost soul type, or the person who is in transition, the person who is in pain, and they are desperately seeking a community in a good way. I think this is a good thing to seek out, and that this is the space that becomes. And so, and there are other types of personalities and then there are people who are just like, I'm stressed out, I need some relief, this is supposed to help, I will do this. And they come. And, you know, you get all of these people like, you know, so-and-so says it's good for me, so I guess I'll try it. Or this person got me a pass and I guess I'll go there. And there's something to be said of the experience of a live format place. And I think that while I miss the live event and the community that I could foster, I would say that I had to work really hard to foster that sense of community at some of these studios that were very cold and intimidating and very aloof and unfriendly. And if you're to answer that part of the question, I think if you're a first time person coming into a yoga studio and everyone has their fancy mat and is in their like sexy little outfits and they're like, you know, it can be really intimidating. And the teacher's like cueing like on rhythm and you're like, what the fuck am I supposed to be doing right now?
Yes,
and there's
yes.
like this sense of embarrassment. I wish I could hide. And the teacher calls you out and it's like, I don't know where I'm supposed to go or what I'm supposed to do. And this place is too cool for me or I'm not good enough. And maybe I perceive that sense because I've had that feeling so much in my life and I've had to like prove myself. Like, I mean, for years, actually, I would go to do motivational talks and I would always do this thing. And like, I remember doing a tour in Australia in particular, and I would always kind of mingle with people before the event started, just to kind of like catch the vibe, like what's going on with people, what's happening in their lives. And so many times people would treat me like I was like the usher and they're like, yeah, so where do we sit? Just tell me where I'm supposed to sit. Okay. Would get things like that. And I would have to like win over the room. And sometimes I feel like it's not winning over the room, but teaching someone that they're allowed to take up space, that this is this place of community, that if you're coming to one of my Instagram lives, if you're coming to one of my virtual talks, if you're coming to one of my yoga classes, which I don't teach anymore, but if you were going to come to one of those, that this is your space and that this is a safe space and it's a loving space. And you know, and so I don't know. I don't know if that actually answered the questions that you were trying to ask me, but
it did.
My best.
It did. I realize sometimes I can ask some questions that are multifaceted and ambiguous, and that's also part of my nonverbal learning disorder too. So I just roll with it and embrace it as it comes, and I think you answered that beautifully. So thank you for sharing that.
I could not agree more. I would like to know, as we do wind this down, what would you like to plug for lack? I would say that I don't know how many times I've just said a lack of better word, but what would you like to plug? Or there's something that you're working on now. Is there something that really you want our audience and even your audience who may listen to this want to know or need to know about yourself? Or
well, right now on my YouTube channel, there are, I think, 14 hours of mindset talks and guided meditations with me. Awesome. And I just launched the YouTube channel. It's all free content. So if anyone wants that or needs that resource right now, I basically took some of the stuff that I had been doing at the beginning of the pandemic and I've been putting it out there for people, just because some of those meditations, people can't afford my one-on-one services. And it was sort of my way of supporting people. And so more than anything, I would like people to check that out, so that if you know, there are little scroll marks, you can skip past all of the hi, how's it going stuff on Instagram Live to the actual point where I start talking about content and then dive into the meditations. And I just feel like if I could plug anything, it would be that resource for people.
That's beautiful. We'll
share it. Yeah.
All that in our show notes, 100%. Yeah, that's something I will look at myself.
Yes, and we'll follow you. We'll follow you from our YouTube as well, and we can cross our communities over each other to support. And then one thing I would like actually for you to plug, because I kind of talked about it when we were introducing you, but you're also an author and you released a book, which is I Cheat a Meditation. And if I'm not mistaken, you're also either have published a second publication or you are in the process of working on a second book as well, right?
Well, so yeah, I co-authored a couple of books. I co-authored 20 Beautiful Women, Volume 2. And so it's a series of women in leadership and their stories. So that one's a bestseller as well. And then I co-authored a book called Coach Wisdom with some really cool people. Steve Jobs' coach was in that book as well. So it's just a chapter and like just some insights for people who are interested in the coaching industry. And then the I Cheat at Meditation book is out right now. It's actually on sale, but it comes with guided audio and stuff as well. And it's like, it was kind of meant to be like, read it in a couple of hours. There's cartoons. It's really fun. Like I said, there's audio, but it was meant to give you everything that you need to be able to meditate without religion, without spirituality. And that's not to say, obviously, from our discussion today, you guys know that I am deeply spiritual.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be. Physiologically, we were all designed to meditate. And it is powerful for healing your brain, for empowering higher thinking and choice and mental health. And so I would say, yeah, the I Cheat at Meditation book is out. And the next book to come out is called I Cheat at Sleep.
Oh, interesting.
So that'll come out hopefully in the springtime.
Okay. That's amazing. Well, like I said, we'll put all the information that we can in our show notes. And I'm so happy that I finally got to meet you. So, and I still know we have people in common, but we won't talk about we won't give their names out in the show, but.
How do you know Pam?
What's that?
Pam Smith?
I don't know who that is.
Oh, she was one of our mutual friends.
Did you know Mike, though, Sukup?
He's the one. Yeah, he's like the main one.
Yeah, but I don't know who that is. Interesting. We'll have to talk about that after. I'm not sure. Just thank you very much for selflessly giving us your time.
And follow up with me on that hypnosis. I meant it.
I also meant it. Yeah. Thank you. I will.
Thank you. And thank you again, as Rachel said, for believing in me and giving your time. And it's just been such a privilege to be considered a friend and a colleague in this lifetime that we're both on this planet. And I'm excited to see how both of our journeys continue to blossom and to intermingle with each other.
Me too. And I'm really excited for this podcast platform. And you two, you guys have like good vibes together.
Oh,
thank you.
I was saying that to Hero the other night, but I was like, when I came onto your live, I was like, oh, they have like good chemistry.
We're just two crazy Jews with lots of mental health issues and a schmeckle of yoga.
Well, also, I'm honored to be brought on to, like, I'm not Jewish, so I'm also honored to be on your podcast for that.
It's too. For everybody. As I talked about, we were kind of talking about having a show, and she was like, between two Jews or between two roses or whatever the hell she said. And so, and
it's a take on Between Two Ferns with Zach.
Oh, right.
But anyway.
Right. And I was like, well, everyone's like, casting shade. What can I say? Well, I want to have a juice brand, and I wanted to call it Jews, Jewce, and then ship it out to synagogues and do it on tap when people are in congregation services, even though I'm the furthest from being religious. I'm like, okay, I'm never going to use this business plan. So I'm like, why don't we get Jewcy? And that's how we came up with the name.
I love to play on words, and is it just me, or do you miss comedy?
I so miss comedy.
I miss stand-up comedy so much.
I do too.
Like, I feel like all the comedians, like, I really miss them.
I know. I try to say I'm a stand-up comedy, but it doesn't come out unless if it's organic like this. So you know what? Eat your heart out, lovely.
All the comedians now have podcasts. That's what they're doing. They all have podcasts now. And no, I do. I miss all kinds of live stuff. I miss live theater and live music and all those kinds of things. But yeah, no, funny enough, I believe we've only actually had like a handful of actual Jews on the show. Not really. Literally.
We've had a little schmeckling of Jews just to make sure that there's a little bit of a thread.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway.
I love that word, Hero.
I love it too. And my breasts are very happy. And Rachel's going to totally like do a face palm on this, but I just love playing with them. So.
You know I adore you, Hero.
I God hope so.
Me too. Jesus. We actually do need to do more shows, just Hero and I, which is something we've been planning on doing as well. But
thank you.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
A wonderful day. Happy New Year.
Yes.
And we'll talk soon.
And big hugs for now, but I can't wait to give you a big hug because I miss your hugs too, lovely.
I miss hugs in general. I'm just going to hug myself. I'll do that.
Good.
I have the t-shirts from my company. They're like little yoga tanks. We need to make a man tank, but it says in smaller letters because you don't want some rando coming up to you. Like you want someone who's kind of in your bubble right now, especially. But they say, because I've always said this for years, but hugs are their own food group.
Yes.
They're done, so they'll launch next year on the site.
Yay! That's awesome.
Amazing. I would love a mank.
And the highly meditated hoodies, we're just looking for a local provider because it's about the ethically made stuff.
Yes.
But the hoodies that say highly meditated.
I have someone that I might, if you haven't found someone yet, I do have a Vancouver-based girl, and almost forget. I know her name's Henrietta, but now I forget her company's name.
Oh, Tagulan.
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 Hook me up later.
Yeah.
You
Anyway,
up. Henrietta Divine.
Recording, right?
Yes.
recording. Okay.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much, Farzana. Much love. We'll talk to you very soon, okay? Take care and be safe.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Ah!